Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Type in the chat box. You are with Jodie and I, and oh, there's
Hi,
Barb.
Barb. Hi, Barb.
We figured we'd open the doors a little bit early and give us a minute to chat before we started the official webinar. So type in the chat box and tell us on a scale of 1 to 10 how resilient you think you are right now. On a scale of 1 to 10, how resilient are you right now? Nancy says 5. Alice, 8, 7. We've got some resilient people with us already, Jodie.
Yeah, I'd love to know, what are you doing for yourself to have such high numbers when it comes to how you're showing up in the world as your resilient selves?
Such a great question. Hope.
Hope.
Oh, Nancy has hope. Oh,
Yeah.
a good sleep.
hmm
Denial.
Jennifer, hey, you fake it till you make it.
Jen. Actually, Jen, I happen to know, is crushing it in the short-term rental space. I have
Mhm.
seen her all over Instagram she's got a beautiful short-term rental property in Muskoka, and she's doing a fantastic job. So I don't think she's in that much denial. I think she's
Mhm.
hustling. That's what I think.
Yeah,
Anybody
fantastic.
who's just come in the last couple of minutes, we're just asking on a scale of 1 to 10, how resilient are you feeling right now? And then Jody had a good follow-up question, which was, what is making you resilient, or what is enabling you to be more resilient? For any of the people who just joined us in the last couple of minutes.
I had a university professor on my very first day of my first year. It was his first class as well. And it was kinesiology 102, it was biomechanics. And he said, on the days that you're feeling your worst, dress and look your best. And I don't remember a whole lot of biomechanics, but I do remember that piece of teaching and advice. So there's often times where I'm not feeling so great. And so I will kind of put that effort in to do the hair or to wear some mascara that day just to show up. And that seems to help too.
Oh, it absolutely does. And I'll be honest, yeah, that is me today. I
Yeah.
am wearing mascara. I don't wear it usually, but definitely it helps. And Jen says not drinking alcohol helps a
Mhm.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're so right, Jen. There's such a sort of societal belief that, when you're stressed out or overwhelmed or whatever, when you're dealing with stuff, go have a drink and it'll help. And I think maybe it can help in the moment, but I don't know. It's definitely probably not a healthy coping mechanism in the long
Mhm.
run, eh, Jody?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. You might, your sense of withdrawal often accompanies that desire to engage in substance use or any kind of vice. Whether it's shopping or eating or sex is even an activity that we engage in to distract from other things when we're not feeling well. And so it's knowing that the motivation behind that is coming from a place of denial or withdrawal really changes the way that you're able to engage in things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you speak about it so kindly,
Mm,
which I don't know. I don't know if that's from your experience or if that's just from your experience as a grief coach and the education you've been through, but you speak very
yeah.
kindly of it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I think a part of it, I teach a lot in mental health awareness and reducing stigma. And
Mm,
language really matters when you are trying to create a space where someone feels open with you to share hard things. And so if you
mm,
use destigmatizing language, it creates space for connection. And
yeah,
when we're moving through hard things and wanting to share those hard things, that's often a strategy that can help us to start to process things a little bit differently, start to help us gain a little bit more understanding about what it is, and move forward.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And Jen said, a grief coach. I love that. Aren't we all grieving something?
Yes.
Jen, there is so much accuracy in that. And it's funny because I find a lot of people think, well, nobody's died recently,
Yeah.
so that must mean that I'm not grieving. And I guess maybe I should start the webinar before we go too far off in this
Yep.
direction, eh? So I'll do the official start and then we'll dive into Debbie says,
Mhm.
especially since panini. You are
Mhm.
correct, Debbie, especially since the panini. Um, so we'll get started on the webinar and then we'll be able to dive a little bit deeper into this. And I'm so glad you're here with us today, Jodie. We are in exceptionally good hands, folks.
Mm.
All right, so sharing the correct slide. So welcome to today's webinar. It is called Choosing Resilience, Turning Surprises into Success. And the importance of this is because I have discovered that whether we have physically lost someone or whether we are going through changes in our lives and our circumstances, we are typically in various stages of the grief process. Whether we are grieving what we envision for our future, we are grieving a relationship, a job, a goal or a vision that we had that might not be possible anymore. Grief is one of these things that a lot of us experience and many of us don't know how to talk about. And quite honestly, Jodie and I were talking about this a little bit before, particularly if you're in the male space, it can be very, very difficult to process and move through grief, even just something as simple as losing your job. So that of course is in the personal context, and then there is in the real estate space when we believe that we have invested with somebody that we can trust and we learn that we can't trust them anymore, or when we had a vision for our retirement and the funds that we were going to use to fund that vision for retirement are not available to us at the time, or perhaps have been diverted or lost through whatever circumstances have happened. So no matter what's going on, whether it's in the personal space, the business space, the professional space, I think we all go through grief and we probably don't spend enough time talking about it. So I am really honored today to have Jodie Baulkham as my guest, and we're going to dive a little bit more into grief. Now we have to do a little bit of housekeeping first. So I'm going to share with you, this is my disclaimer. And it basically says that I bring people on who I love and resonate with and believe they have something valuable to share. But anytime you are working with anyone or looking or at anything or learning about anything, it is up to you to do your own due diligence and ensure that everyone is a good fit for you. Always make sure you're doing your own research, including talking to other people and your legal or accounting teams, and then make your decision. Just a quick little touch point on how we're going to work the webinar today. So right here, there is a drop down in the chat box. It probably defaulted to hosts and panelists for you. Make sure you click everyone. This is really more of a workshop style webinar today. So Jodie will be asking questions. I'll be asking questions. We'll be looking for you to engage. We want to make sure that you're understanding concepts and that everybody's on the same page as we move forward. So make sure you click the drop down and post to everyone. If you have questions for Jodie, please use at the bottom here, you'll see there's the bar. Please use the Q&A tab so that at the end, we have allocated about 10 minutes at the end for Jodie to answer questions. So if you have a question that is not directly pertinent to what we're covering right now and Jodie can circle back at the end, then please use that. I'm going to ask you not to put questions, if possible, in the chat, because then we end up either derailed or they could get lost. So we have quite a few important things we want to share with you today, and following that process will really help. So our agenda for today, we're going to do introductions, the discussion, we'll have the Q&A towards the end, and then I'll do a quick wrap up. Now, I want to try something new today, and I couldn't think of a better person to try it with. What I want to do is, for those of you who are attending, I don't want this to be passive where you're just kind of sitting back and, eating your crackers and cheese and, fiddling on your phone. This is something that has such tremendous opportunity to be able to be life-changing for you. So I want to make sure that everybody is engaged and following what's going on. So I would like to ask everyone during the course of the webinar today, identify one key takeaway from today's session that you are willing to commit to implementing within the next 24 hours. And then at the end, I will ask everybody to type in what is their biggest takeaway, what do they feel will help them move forward with becoming more resilient in the future. I, of course, am your host. My name is Elizabeth Kelly, and I am a real estate and business coach. I am a serial investor and entrepreneur for more than 20 years now. I was formerly a top trainer with Rich Dad Canada, and I worked with thousands of investors across the country, helping them start their real estate businesses. And our guest today is Jodie, and she is a licensed educator, professional grief coach, and certified leader character practitioner. And she's dedicated to helping people build resilience and navigate life's toughest challenges. And that, I think, is the most important part of Jodie being here for us today. And it is because, sorry, my talking and doing capabilities are a little slow today. Um, we've all been through a lot. 2024 was a lot, whether it was a lot in a good way or a lot in a bad way, it has been a lot. So, what I wanted to do, what my everything I've been doing in January has been focused on is how do we leave a lot behind and focus on making 2025 better? And for some people, they didn't want to do goal setting this year. For some people, it meant that they they were thinking, I'm just white knuckling it right now. I've been through a lot. How do I just move forward? And that inspired my 10-day habit hacking challenge, where it was, if you don't want to do the big goal setting, if you don't want to do all the, the intention and the drama and everything, let's start really small. What is one thing you can do for the next 10 days that's going to set you up for success? That's one step towards the version of yourself that you want to become this year. And I think that part of that is letting go of that identity that we had last year, or who we thought we were last year, accepting that, and then being able to come back from that. And resilience is, I think, one of those critical things that as investors, as business owners and entrepreneurs, we need to have, because not everything is roses and sunshine. I had, to be perfectly frank, a shitty week last week. It was a rough week. And I felt myself this weekend going, like, I feel like I'm drowning here. It was like a pylon. It was, one bad thing, and then the next day something else happened, and then the day after that there was something more, and I'm just like, how much more can get piled on me right now, and I can still keep my head above the water. And it made me so glad that all of you were going to be joining me today, and that Jodie was going to be sharing a lot more with us about resilience and about the fact that it is a muscle. It is one of those things that the more we exercise that muscle, the stronger we become, the faster we bounce back, the faster we pivot, and the more that we can help others in our lives do the same thing. So that was a lot. Jodie, welcome. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. So happy to be here and have this conversation.
Well, we are really honored to have you here. You, of course, are an author. You have written a fabulous book called Choosing My Tomorrow: Surviving Murder, Navigating Mental Health, and Harnessing the Power of Choice. And I love that word about the power of choice, because so many times when we are dealing with these tough circumstances, we feel like we have no choice. We feel powerless. So, how do we maybe we should establish what resilience is first, and then we can start to talk about how we make that shift from where we're feeling stuck, where we're feeling overwhelmed, where we're feeling powerless, into becoming empowered.
Mm, I love that, bringing in choice. That's part of how I define resilience. And that is it's about choosing to engage in the adversity that we find ourselves a part of, with the belief and the hope that we're going to come out better for it. And I believe, who was Nancy talked about, one of her strategies for maintaining that high number on her resilience scale right now is hope. And it's true. There's that um, I relied on Viktor Frankl quite a bit. He's an author. He was a Holocaust survivor. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and he talks about the space between stimulus and response. And in that space is our power to choose. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And I have really taken a hold of the intention of that quote and applied it in all aspects of my life. And so, if we're able to um, choose how we're responding, if we're able to actually take a step back and analyze how we're showing up, then we're going to be able to choose differently. And you talked about, all of the things that happened in 24, and it's human nature for us to focus on the negative things and not as much celebrate the things that were right or that we did do well. So it's like, how can we actually make the choice to carry both the things that are going well for us and those that aren't in balance, in order to help us reframe our mindset moving forward?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to invite people to share what was one thing that didn't go according to plan for you in 2024. What was one thing that, January of last year, you were sitting here going, this is what I see in my future for this year. And it did not happen. And you can share as much or as little as you want. Keep in mind, this will be probably go up on YouTube at some point, but I don't think the chat goes up. So people won't see specifically who said it, and I will try not to, we won't mention names, but if you're comfortable sharing, and I'm happy to start the share and say, I thought that I would have bought more real estate in 2024, and I didn't. That was something that was unexpected for me. And I found that it called into question for me whether I was actually an investor if 12 months went by and I didn't buy a piece of property. It made me
Mm.
start actually second guessing, who am I? This is my identity. People are very quiet. I'm wondering
Yeah. Or
if
there
we
takes us some time to take it
hit a bit
in.
of a nerve.
There we go.
All right, so my garden suite did not get refinanced as planned, and you still have lots of money tied up. Oh, that's a tough one, right? Because you're counting on being able to roll that money over. It impacts your return on your investment. It impacts, your probably your cash flow if you have, borrowed private money and now you can't roll over and go with the lower cost bank money. I have investments that are in jeopardy. I don't know what is going to happen with those projects, but I may lose my principal. Oof, that is a tough one. And there are a lot of people, unfortunately, out there in that situation. And I was thinking of each of you when I asked Jodie to talk to us about resilience, because I know that's a hard one to come back from. Negative cash flow from my current properties affected other financial obligations. Yep, absolutely. We feel a tremendous sense of responsibility. Those of us with ethics and integrity, we go, I owe someone something. Someone has an expectation. I made a commitment. I made a promise, and I'm not able to follow that or to honor that. An accident in early December, devastating to a solopreneur, business clients, and new clients. Yeah, unsure what 2025 holds. I thought I would have started a business, but it hasn't happened yet. Absolutely fair. You start to question yourself and your sense of who you are. We bought a triplex to house hack as our first investment, served an N12 and expected the tenant would leave. Now waiting 4 months for a hearing. Oof,
Mm.
that's a tough one too. And I mean, that one literally, there's not much you can do. Tenants have the legal right. It's if someone's legitimately moving in and there's no reason for them to think that they shouldn't, but man, there's stuff. Diagnosed with cancer, unable to work while my wife was pregnant. Oh, that is a lot. Locked in 3-year fixed rate in the beginning of 2024 instead of choosing variable. Oh, so we're busy beating ourselves up, I see, because we should have made a different choice. At least we believe we should have. Not setting boundaries with people and feeling the wrath. Oh, so we've got a mix there of some heavy personal stuff and some professional stuff that I found someone as interested as and I am in real estate. Turns out it was all, oh dear. Okay, so feeling like maybe we misjudged.
Yeah.
You guys are dealing with a lot. You guys are dealing with a lot. And Jody, why don't we talk a little bit about, first of all, I want to acknowledge each of you for making the time today with us a priority. And I really, truly hope that you will take as much away from this conversation as I have through my conversations with Jody. And we were kind of catching up right before, and we realized we're in some kind of similar places. We're both trying to support spouses who have PTSD and are struggling with parents and grief around those. And there are people out there who will understand where you are. So please, 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 if you are struggling for these reasons or any others, please reach out to people. Jody, how can we help everyone here today develop more resilience?
Yeah, that's a big ask, especially when
Oh,
all of these things, they're so big, right? And they can be all consuming if we don't have perspective. And you and I were talking a little bit about that was a strategy that you used this weekend, trying to gain perspective on things. And so it's stemming from your exercise in habit formation and building positive habits so that our default is positive as opposed to negative. And many of the stressors that people are experiencing that you read out have to do with things that are outside of their control,
Mm.
right? And so if we talk about stress, right, stressors are the things in our environment, and stress is how we internally process them. And so you can divide stress into a certain some categories. Some people find that really helpful in order to actually identify where the stressors are coming from so that you can analyze what it is that's actually impacting you and then choose to maybe relate to those stressors in a different way. And that's where the habit formation comes into, and that's where the mindset shifts help to support that, because what can you control really is only yourself. And so, how
Mhm.
are we showing up with that more balanced perspective? What tools are we using? What positive coping strategies are we employing in our life that work well for us? And because I know in a lot of the folks that you serve, it's go, 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 it's do, do, do. And so,
Mhm.
how are you building in the time in order to support yourself? And even recognize that things might not be going well. Some people just realize that when it gets to a point where everything seems to be crashing down. So it's how are we able to notice things sooner so that we can start to change the way that we're relating to that stressor in a different way.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true because so much of life is a repetition of a pattern until we learn what we need to learn, right?
Mhm.
So, if we make a poor choice in a partner, if we don't take the time to evaluate what choices we made and why we made them, and sort of the things that led to the circumstance, if we don't take the opportunity to learn that and to make conscious effort to choose differently in the future, I believe, anyways, I have repeated the same choices and ended up, and I look up a year later or 2 years later, I'm like, how did I end up here again? I swear I was just here, but I had a different partner that led me here. So if
Yeah.
we don't put the intention behind it, and you mentioned something great before we started where you said a lot of people when they talk about resilience, they talk about like mindfulness and gratitude and journaling, but that doesn't always resonate with people. Sometimes
Mhm.
people need something a little more tangible, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, gratitude, there's science, there's research behind it that says when you are able to show appreciation for things big and small, that can help
Mm,
to shift your mindset and allow you to show up in a little bit more of a positive space. Journaling helps you sometimes access insights into your life, but some people don't enjoy that practice. But there are things that when you're being intentional. And I think this is the key when you're talking about being resilient, because resilience requires you to adapt while you're going through the hard things, be willing to grow from it. So, actually saying, oof, that was hard, but what can I learn? And how can I show up differently, like you said? So, I'm not in the same place 2 years from now, just with a different partner or person. Um, and really giving yourself grace in the process. And this is, I think, one of the hardest things for people is to show self-compassion. We are often much better at offering this to other people than we are to ourselves. And so if we can
mhm,
give ourselves a little bit more grace, because a lot of these things, if you start to listen to that inner critic that tells you you're always going to fail, you really shouldn't be, this industry isn't cut out for you, you've made these mistakes, you're always going to make mistakes. When we start to believe that voice, our thoughts are going to inform our feelings. And so our
mhm,
self worth decreases, our confidence is lower. We
mhm,
increase that self doubt, and we act from that place. And so we continue to show up without the clarity that we need in order to change the way that we show up and make those choices in the future. So I think a large part is quieting that inner critic. And that comes with strategies to help interrupt thoughts and replace those negative words with more positive ones. And again, this isn't always easy for people. And in my work as a facilitator with the Mental Health Commission of Canada, in their Working Mind program, they offer traps that people fall into when it comes to thinking negatively. And those are they include overgeneralizing. So if you find
mhm,
yourself using words like always and never and everybody, right? They say mind reading. So if you are making assumptions about the behavior of someone else and you're personalizing it to think it's your fault, So if you
Mhm.
walk by someone and they don't say hello back to you, you're like, "Oh my gosh, they must not like me. What did I do wrong?" And so you
Yeah.
start to spin and spiral. There's another one where how often do you find yourself saying the word should? I should do this. I should do that. I need to do this, right? You're setting unrealistic expectations for yourself. You're continuously not meeting them. So that contributes to a sense of shame, blame, and failure. And so there
Mm.
again, that self-worth is depleting. And then there's catastrophizing. So thinking, of the worst case scenario all of the time. And I would offer, my teenage daughter probably falls into overgeneralizing more often than not. All of her friends are doing this. Everybody's going there. All right. My husband who has PTSD, he falls into the worst case scenario a lot. So the trick there is to identify your tendency to fall into one of these traps and then counteract it. So you're
Mhm.
using, acknowledging as the first step and then counteracting that by questioning yourself. Do you know this to be true? Has someone told me this? Am I just assuming? And then this last question I say, if you can't remember any of the other ones, remember this. What would you say to a friend? Because we are
Mhm.
so much better able to engage with other people in a compassionate way, start to talk to ourselves that way in order to shift the narrative that is going to inform here to here and then your actions.
Yeah, I love that because we definitely do. I think a lot of us have that tendency to say really unkind things to ourselves in our head that we would
Mm,
never dream of saying to a loved one, but we say it
yeah,
to ourselves because nobody's around to hear it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, what about if you are someone who struggles with even acknowledging situations? Because I know, like my husband, for example, he struggles with when there's tough conversations to be had, he'd prefer not to. He'd prefer to go play with tools in the garage. I
Yeah.
have friends whose husband, I'm going to go work on the car. Someone's coming over for dinner. I'm going to go, I'm going to go mow the lawn. Like whatever it is, avoidance is also a challenge when it comes to resilience. I think we really have to acknowledge the reality of the situation. How do you help people um, who are sort of in a little bit of denial or aren't wanting to see what's actually going on.
Yeah, I would think, the first step of that is creating space for conversations to take place. And
Mhm.
then assessing whether or not that person is even at a space where they can engage. And so in my home, when my husband was his most ill, and I'll share with your viewers too, like I have a daughter with obsessive compulsive disorder. And so mental health and conversations around that we were having those at the dinner conversation or dinner table regularly in order to help Alexis support herself
Mhm.
in engaging the tools that her psychologist had given. And it was the tools for my daughter at the age of 9 and 10 years old that actually helped the adults more than anything
Really?
else. And she introduced the feelings wheel and a system called the number system. And basically, on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being your greatest capacity to engage in a hard conversation, and 1 being you don't have any capacity at all, we would rate ourselves. We would ask, what's your number? And if any one of us was at a 3 or less, we knew that the types of questions or the conversations would be mostly transactional. What are we having for dinner
Mhm.
tonight? When do we have to get to that appointment? Who's driving here? Right? So you have to assess the level of ability for someone to engage with you. And that really helps in providing data to know how best to support.
Mhm.
So if these people who are going out to their garage and they're avoiding and they're detaching, you ask, what's your number? And then they
Mm.
say 3, it doesn't matter how well you ask your questions, how articulate you are at rationalizing all of your thoughts, they're not in a place to receive.
That is so powerful to ask that question because I feel like as a society, we are now so conditioned to be like, I'm sharing my perspective, I'm sharing my thoughts. We just
Yeah.
all over social media and this is who I am and this is what I want and blah blah blah. And we spend there's such a focus on putting ourselves out there that I find there's less room to accept people as they show up and as they are and how you can, what we're doing for other people. It's a lot of times more about what other people can do for us.
Mm, mhm.
So I love that perspective of asking that question, setting, establishing that as a precedence in your relationships, especially your home relationships,
Yeah,
but what
yeah,
assessing what is your capacity? Can you handle this conversation right now?
yeah, absolutely. And then that
Because you're
informs
you're
your
right.
next steps. And it
Yeah,
and it
because
helps to
strategically,
yeah,
even you're not
yeah,
going to get a resolution that is beneficial if someone's not even in a place where they can listen.
yeah, yeah. And then at the same time, knowing that information, that helped me to stop take things personally because I used to think that, it was how I was acting that was causing, the response on the other end of things. But really it's about that person's journey. And
Mm,
so if I know what the number is, then I can understand that this isn't about me and I stop that tendency to mind read and make assumptions. And so that
oof.
helps to build my feeling of self-worth up, allows me to show up with a little bit more resolve and agency and builds my resilience because I'm not attached to what other people are doing.
Yeah. I love that, and it's, I don't has anyone else here bought the new Mel Robbins book, Let Them? Anyone else here bought it? I'm a recovering people pleaser, and one of the things I realized I do is I try and make how I communicate with people perfect because I assume that their ability to listen is based on my ability to put an idea or something out there. So
Yes.
I am trying to control them and where they're at by saying, if I can just find the perfect way to express this thought, then I can control how they receive it.
Mhm.
But
But
that
it
doesn't
doesn't
really
work that way.
doesn't work that way, does it?
It doesn't work that way. No. A lot of
Yeah.
folks in the chat have had experience with her, and you know what? My husband has read the book. He was away, managing some of the estate after his mom had passed away, and he read the book there, and he came back differently. And mine's on order. I haven't and he left it for his brother, so I haven't had the opportunity to read it, but I know her premise. And it really is it can be very, helpful to give yourself that perspective, right? It's
Yeah.
liberating in a way if you can embody that. I had one of my, friends say that, when we see people who are not doing things that we think that they should, or you're gonna wanna help them, right? You sense someone that is suffering, but if you interject and you try to fix, you're actually taking the lessons away. You're stopping them from healing. You have to sit in the stuff in order to be able to move out of it. And how you move out of it is different than how I will. So you've got to let me. And
Mm,
that's going to inform my healing journey. That's going to inform my resilience journey. What do I get to pull from all of the things that I've learned over the course of my life in order to show up next time in a better
yeah.
way?
Yeah. I love that because we have no control over other people's outcomes, and I think a lot of times we try and control the outcome by being helpful. So we
Mm,
tell ourselves, "Oh, I'm being helpful. I'm going to share my experience. I'm going to provide advice to someone." And I picked up a saying a little while ago. I don't even know who to credit it to, but it's unsolicited advice is criticism. And I was like,
mm,
"Oof,
yeah. Right? We are
I do that."
fixers, we are helpers, we wanna do the things, but I think the
It's our
most helpful that
identity.
we can be is just to
Yeah.
provide space
Yeah.
for these people.
Absolutely. And I find sometimes the best help we can actually provide is just to ask questions without a particular attachment to the answer, but it's to help people explore themselves what success looks like, what the next step looks like without having to have, without having a predetermined destination in mind. Does that make
Mhm,
sense?
mhm. 100%.
Love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So, one of the things that I use for resilience is I use perspective. And this is what I was telling you this weekend when I was like sitting back and what I really wanted to do was stay in bed all day and watch Netflix, and I wouldn't let myself do that. So I said to myself, how much significance am I giving these situations that I'm dealing with right now? How much power am I giving to these situations? And the question I asked myself was, will this matter in a week, a month, a year, or 10 years? And if it
Mm,
mattered in a week, then it got to have some attention. If it mattered in a month, okay, it got a little more attention. If it didn't matter in a year or 10 years, it was not worth it. absolutely not worth giving it the bandwidth. And the best thing I found when I'm in one of those like ruminating stuck things and I want to be more resilient is to move my body. So typically I combine it with doing something outside, a little bit of grounding, and I find that can be so helpful for me. And then I remind myself, how many things have I been through before? How many things have I experienced? Is this the worst situation I've ever encountered? Well, no, actually, it's not because I've been through A, B, and C, which were infinitely worse. My success rate is 100% at coming through challenges. So I need to keep this in perspective. And that's
Yeah.
something I think that you use and talk about as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I tend to not compare myself to other people. And this has been something that has allowed my confidence to increase because when we're able to, like you said, you have 100% success rate on getting through the hard things. Right. And so when we're going through something, giving ourselves grace and not comparing is really
Mm.
important. I tend to fall back a little bit more on the somatic part of paying attention to what's going on in my body in order to
Okay.
be able to access the more rational parts of my mind. And so, Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor, she talks about the fact that a feeling actually only lasts for 90 seconds. And then after that, it's our thoughts that
Mhm.
hijack us. It's the stories that we're telling ourselves, it's the attachment that we have, and it's our thoughts that keep these feelings alive. And so I've gotten into the practice of allowing myself to have the feelings and
Mm.
then acknowledging
Mhm.
what is that and where am I holding it? Because it's going to be, is it in my neck? Is it in my back? Like, where is
Mm.
it in my body? And then I pay attention and I breathe into it. And so when I say I breathe into it, we use diaphragmatic breathing in order to help regulate the nervous system. So it's an inhale through your nose for 4 seconds. You hold it for 4 seconds, you audibly sigh for 4 seconds, and you hold it for 4 seconds. And so in my time at the RCMP, we called that box breathing. And if you do that for 2 minutes, you can really decrease your heart rate and you can actually access that more rational cognitive part of your brain so that you can start to get to the place where you can look at perspective. Because if you are so
Mm.
heightened and you are kind of in that fight, flight, freeze mode, it's really hard to access the best parts of your brain in order to make those really good decisions. So I tend to move inward with acknowledgement and some breath work. Um, Body movement and being outside also is really helpful. And I've gotten out of the habit of bringing my AirPods with me.
Oh.
Right? A lot of people, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to listen to a podcast or I'm going to listen to music. I've gotten into more of just settling into
Mm.
my surroundings and I find that really helpful and grounding. And all of this is in an effort to be able to access, the better things that are going on with me and allows me to um, show that grace and that compassion. One of your uh, coming in the chat talks about forest bathing. Like there really it's there's power and there's balance in healing. And is that going to bring the money into your account right now? The answer is no. But it's going to stop you from ruminating on the fact that it's not there right now. And it's going to
Yeah.
help you get to a point where, okay, how can I be creative? How can I engage with other solutions right now in order to tackle this? Who else can I bring into my life that I can trust and talk to in order to help me through these hard times? And so building
Mhm.
that social sense of community as well is really important in helping you navigate through hard things, because I also find people tend to get into the harder parts of life. They'll isolate and they'll keep everything here and they'll keep
Yeah.
everything inside.
I very much find that I tend to do that too. Like this weekend, there were some people who messaged me and I didn't have it in me to reach out and be like, "Yeah, everything's great. Everything's wonderful." But I'm also not comfortable saying, "Yeah, things are kind of crappy right now." And, like I don't want to share that. I don't want that to rub people. So I have a tendency just to go into myself and then I just don't talk to anybody, which I
Mhm.
don't think is always healthy either.
Yeah, yeah.
There are some fantastic comments here. Do we want to talk
Mhm.
about a couple of them? So Kendra said it's so hard not to compare ourselves to others, especially with social media and the pressures for entrepreneurship. Absolutely. Nobody's going on social media and going, my day was crap. I put on two different shoes this morning when I left the house. The dog barfed. Like nobody's talking about, I didn't even get a lunch hour today. Somebody screamed at me for 3 hours this afternoon. My tenant didn't show up for the showings and I wasted my time. Like nobody's posting that on social media as like this realistic caption of this is what my day looks like.
Mhm.
So it is really hard because we're comparing our internal reality to the best things that are, shiny and polished up and posted on social media by others. How do we not compare ourselves? How do we stay
Mhm.
focused on our own journey?
Yeah. Um, I would recommend when you are feeling well to put parameters around your engagement with social media and what that looks like. Because as we start to feel the impact of stress, when we start to react to things, our perception shifts and the way we internalize those data points come in differently. And in my work, we talk about the mental health continuum. So, green is when you are healthy, you are able to access all of the good, positive coping strategies, show up in your day feeling well. When we start to react to stress, for a little while, we can hold that mask up to, fake that we're doing everything is okay. And we talk about, that image of a duck on the water, but underneath they're like paddling really, really hard to maintain that forward momentum.
Yeah.
When we live in that space too long, and we default to anger, or we're sharp with people and we can't concentrate anymore, right? So as we start to shift from green to yellow to orange and then eventually to red, which is a diagnosis within the mental health space, the severity and the intensity of our symptoms are increasing and our ability to cope and function are decreasing. And so
Mm.
this is where it's so important to try to bring awareness to where you are right now in order to intentionally shift your habits in order to get to a better place. And so earlier on, we had a few people talk about where are they? Your 7 and 8s on the resilience scale, they're probably, have one foot firmly in the green, maybe one in the yellow from time to time. They're able to access all those coping strategies. People who are a 5, they might be in the darker shades of yellow. And if they're not careful, they might, as more things happen, they might have a real difficulty maintaining a balanced perspective. And so when it comes to social media and when we become really stressed, we are interpreting things in a way that is going to make us seem even less worthy. Going back to how our thoughts inform our feelings and our feelings inform our actions, I find that we're in that social media space, more of that will happen more often. And so it's how can we make healthy habits around our usage with the cell phone and the device and what we're engaging in. And someone else talked about, what they do for self-care and resilience is getting quality sleep. People take their phones into their bedrooms. They're just going to watch a few
Mhm.
videos or find a few things. And then, 2.5 hours later, they're still awake. And, so they're not showing up rested and they're not showing up well anymore. And so, how do we
Mhm.
stop that comparison? We be conscious about what we are choosing to consume, and I would offer try to limit news. Limiting news is something that you can do very readily. I mean, I know it's a big day down south. I know that there's a lot of anxiety around what's going to happen to our nation as a result of things that are going on outside of us, but we don't have any control of that stuff. And so again, a reminder to turn inward when we have all of this stuff that's outside of our control.
Yeah, I love that. And I think our tendency when we talk about like health and self-care is to look at the physical. Oh, well, I need to lose weight. I need to count my calories. I need to go to the gym. I need to go for a run. I need to
Mm.
and we do all these things physically, but the mental health has so much control over our physical body. You know,
Oh,
we can go
100%.
on all the runs we want, but if we're not managing our mental health, if we're not, cultivating our resilience, or, making sure that we're looking at things and keeping things in perspective from a mental health perspective, we can still have a heart attack. I mean, stress has a tremendous impact on our physical body.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's
And
all
I don't think
connected.
we Sorry, go ahead.
I just said it's all connected,
Yeah. And
right?
I don't think we make great decisions when we're not managing our, resilience. I By Friday I was like, I need to talk to someone. So I reached out to my high performance coach, and I'm like, I've got all these things going on. This is what I'm really struggling with, like, and I had a solution all mapped out because I'm super solution oriented. Like, don't come to me with a problem without having a couple of solutions for us to talk through. So of course I had my solutions, and he's like, I want you to do nothing. And I'm like, a what now? He's like, "You are not in a place where you are making great choices right now. You need to back it down."
Yeah,
So you can go and do something like tapping, or, like you said, do a meditation, do some breath work. Do something that gets you re-engaged and kind of connected with where you're at, and not, focus less on doing something to try and get out of the situation, and more on checking in with where you are mentally and emotionally with the situation,
yeah,
because you will often come up with better results than you would have if you just fired off something just to get something done.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I agree 100%. That's great advice.
All right, let's see what else we got going on in the chat. So Crystal says, I work on ambulance sometimes. On hard calls, I box breathe. Yeah, you must see, daily on every shift, pretty much, you're going to see spikes in your adrenaline and cortisol levels, and trying to, maintain your nervous system would be absolutely challenging. Box breathing is fantastic. Um, it is really difficult not to compare. I try to remind myself that others often leave out their challenges and costs, both personal and financial, of their
Yes.
projects. Absolutely. I had a hot water tank blow in my commercial building last month, and it cost me $15,000 that I was not expecting to spend a couple of weeks before Christmas. Did not expect to spend it. Didn't have a choice. I had 40 people in my building with no hot water for 5 days. Debbie mentioned something interesting. She said, "Who is in my circle? Who's on my team?" Um, how can we help others who are? I mean, we've established that we don't have control over others. We established we need to let others to protect our own, mental health and space. But what can we do to help other people if someone comes to us and says they're struggling? How do we help them develop resilience?
Yeah, I would offer space holding is the number one thing you can do. Like you had said before, asking really powerful questions and letting them fill in the answers without um, judgment. Right?
Okay.
So open-ended questions, holding space, asking the question and then not filling the silence. That's hard for a lot of people, right? Just have that space open and let them be because they won't be able to access the solutions until you let them have the feelings.
Mm.
And so be the space where they can have the feelings, ask the questions, and then let them have a plan forward.
I love that. My coach says to me sometimes when I'm talking about my husband, he's like, he's going through a lot right now. He's like, he's having trouble. He goes, so you breathe for him. It's like, oh, I can do that. I breathe pretty regularly. Like, I can
Mhm,
breathe for
mhm.
him. So if me just sitting there and doing deep breathing helps him like co-regulate, I can do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I can do that. So you and I sort of had a fun idea, and we thought we might like to do a little bit of an exercise with people to help them create a bit of a resilience plan or something along those lines. Did you want to? Because I know you had a bunch of different ones that we could do, and you were going to pick which one you thought was a good fit based on where our conversation went. Do you
Well,
want to do
yeah,
one?
I mean, I've got a couple of these different habits that you can like implement right now um if you sorry, I was trying to read the
Comment.
comment and talk at
Yeah.
the same time. Clearly, I also have that same can't do two things at once. No, I created 5 different habit resets, based on where you are right now, right? So if movement is a priority for you, if that's something that resonates with you when you're talking about how to reset throughout the day, or maybe it's the what I call the check light system. Where are you? Red, green, or yellow? And what do you have to do? And so I wanted to pop those in the chat to show people that these are some different options that you have. And then see what resonated and if I could answer any questions from that. So I will do that one at a time right now because it didn't want to let me do it all at once. So I will do that.
Zoom
And if
being
there are
bossy.
specific questions coming in, happy to go there too.
Love it. Okay. And what we can do for anyone who happens to be watching the recording, I'll make sure that Mary Beth, my absolute rock star of an assistant, will attach this in the email that goes out as well with the recording of the video. Okay, build a gratitude anchor habit. Identify a trigger, express gratitude, involve others.
There's power in connection, and that's what a lot of these have, is not doing things in isolation either. And
Ooh.
so it kind of stems from some of your habit challenge about how do you build it into your day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just offering whichever ones of these. So yeah, there's the gratitude anchor. There's creating a micro win system, setting goals for the day,
Mm.
and not big goals, small ones. Celebrate yourself in those achievements. Connecting. If you feel like you are not connecting with people, actually setting aside time in your day to reach out and build that for yourself. There's also that stoplight check-in. So that's often, just how am I doing right now? And being real with yourself about what it is you need. And then that physical reset.
Wow. These are huge, Jody. Like these are some fantastic tools for us. I want to spend some time really digging into these. Do you have a preference? Is there one that you like the most, or is it just you would select which one to utilize based on what's going on and where you're at?
Yeah, I shift out. I'll sometimes, if I often lean into gratitude. That's something that I before my feet hit the floor in the morning, I literally I wake up and I say three things that I'm grateful for.
Mhm.
And so that one is something that is already entrenched in what I do. I'm spending more time right now on the physical movement. I find
Okay.
there's a lot of time in front of devices where I am sedentary. So I'd like to increase that in my life. So that's where I'm focusing on right now.
I love that. It's interesting because I do gratitude as well, but I do it at night because I want to make sure that as I'm heading into sleep and I'm solidifying my experience for the day, because that's when, we solidify all the new things, the new stimuli and everything that have come in. I want to make sure that I am heading in from a perspective of gratitude and I don't need to set myself up for nightmares or anything else. So I do the same thing, but I do it in the evening. I wonder how changing it up would feel different.
Mm. Because
That's
I
interesting.
think, it sets me up for a little bit more um, gratitude. It sets me up for success because I'm already showing up positively. So I already have that
I
frame.
like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Why don't we then, if everybody wouldn't mind, type something in the chat box because we've dealt with some stuff that's pretty heavy, and I'm hesitant to send everybody back to, hey, your lunch is over. Go tackle the afternoon. Tell us something you're grateful for, or something that you are looking forward to, and we'll sort of bring things up to. I think the important thing to remember here is that we have so much control over how we feel based on the questions that we ask ourselves and
Hmm.
based on whether we're listening to ourselves, whether we're trying to avoid and just there's this whole in the entrepreneurial and real estate space, there's this whole hustle culture. And the idea is grind until you get there.
Mm,
And I have figured out that that leads to tremendous health challenges, whether it's mental health or physical health. And it would be a lot more enjoyable. This journey would be a lot more fun if we spent a lot more time listening to ourselves and then allowing a lot more of our inner guidance, I think, to have a voice.
yeah. Yeah. There's a comment here that says it's a challenge to set your day up based on how you feel when most things are obligations. And I
Oh,
would offer that the accounting part of my business is not my favorite thing. It is a chore, it is a struggle to get myself there, right? So when I was like, oh, I need to do accounting, that already dips my mood. And so it's one of these others, changing the language around, I get to
Mm,
do this. And I have I've gone through different medical, I had cancer 2 years ago. And so there's just, when you talk about perspective, and so yes, surviving murder, it changed my perspective on life. Having a diagnosis that for me, it has ended well, but knowing that for other people, it doesn't, also has changed the way that I get to enjoy activities that typically I don't love. So it's that balance and that narrative that you're talking to about the get tos instead of saying the need tos or the have tos. It just
mm,
changes your vibration when you shift that. And you know what? If you enjoy coffee and it's hot that morning, then that's what you're grateful for,
yeah.
or the fact that this weekend, well, I'm in Alberta, it's literally -30. In 2 days, it's going to be -12, and I'm waiting for it, you know? So it's just like those small wins. If you can find small wins anywhere, it really can help to shift. But I do sense the heaviness when there's things that have to that are part of your everyday that are there because you're responsible for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's, even if you're in a job that you don't love, it's, what, I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to plan for the future because I'm going to leave and I'm working on a plan to leave in 3 years or
Yeah.
5 years or whatever it is. Jen has a ton of stuff she's grateful for. She shared an awful lot, including 7 pets. That's a lot of pets. Yeah, that's awesome. Debbie likes watching the antics of her pets too. It's amazing how much joy our animals can bring us, eh?
Mhm. Mhm.
Celia says she's grateful to have found her 2025 goal to launch a business for finding off-market deals. Need
Yay.
more cash. At a way to go, Cecilia. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. And honestly, you are in great company because a lot of us in real estate have discovered that the cash flow that we anticipated is not there right now. So we are pivoting to starting businesses because it's one of those things where if we put the time and energy in, the reward comes much faster than it would just in real estate alone. So I love that. All right, so there's a few things that I want to do to wrap up here. So the first thing I'd like to do is congratulate and thank each of you for showing up today, and not just for me, but showing up for yourself, showing up for this with the goal of making this year your best year yet, because there's a lot to be said for that and for having the faith and the confidence that you have the ability to make that happen. I would very much like to thank Jodie so much for your time and your knowledge and expertise. I just love the way you speak and the way that you're present, and I don't know. I feel like you really hold space for each of us, and I would very much like to encourage everyone to reach out to Jody, follow her on Instagram. In fact, let's make that one of the things. If you are not on your phone right now, grab your phone and let me just. Things are not cooperating for me today. Where are we here? Oh, I need to go back to Zoom and then I need to do a share and then everybody will see what I see. There we go. All right. So here is Jodie's contact information. You can send her an email. You can find her website here or find her on Instagram and give her a follow. Such great, fantastic information. The other thing is that Jodie has a couple of really cool things going on, and I'm kind of glad we snuck in at the beginning as Jodie was just getting ready to launch because Jodie, of course, has her fantastic book, Choosing My Tomorrow, and it's all about resilience and cultivating resilience. So feel free to add that to your reading list. It is a great book. Jodie is also going to be hosting a couple of webinars on grief. So if you are someone or you know someone who has experienced grief, and it's not just, losing a person, it can be transitions in your life, it can be unexpected circumstances, then Monday, February 3rd or the 17th, there are webinars on grief. And we don't have a link yet, but you can visit stillstandingretreats.com. So that's stillstandingretreats.com, and you can sign up for the webinars there. And then Jody and Kendra, and who is your other? You have a third in there with you, don't you, for your grief retreat that's coming up in early
Yes.
April?
Kim Lackey is our event planner.
Right, Kim Lackey. I'm like, I know there's a third person, a wonderful. So all of these women have dealt with grief in various capacities, and they are putting together a fantastic summit on grief and recovery and healing. And I think it's, if you're someone who is feeling stuck or feeling overwhelmed, sometimes we feel like, we can't breathe, the seas are so choppy. This might be a great way to start to get your feet underneath you. Thank you so much, Jody, for sharing your time and knowledge and wisdom with us today. We so appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. So, just to recap today, we talked a lot about resilience. We talked about some of the critical things that can help us develop resilience because this is a muscle. So, without the adversity, we're not going to be developing resilience. So let's welcome some of the adversity and know that we are getting stronger, that we are discovering our capabilities, that we are moving into who we can be, the most powerful versions of ourselves. And our resilience that we develop is going to help us navigate challenges. It'll help us seize new opportunities. It also helps us be creative and bold, even when we're encountering uncertainty or challenge or adversity. And these are all things that I believe really help us experience the full realm of the human experience. And that's, I'm not trying to get super existential, but I think one of the things that really struck me, I read something a little while ago about, they were talking about ecosystems, and there's a biome, and when they tried to grow plants and trees in the biome, they couldn't figure out why they were so weak. And the reason why they were so weak is because they were so sheltered and they were so protective, and their roots just all grew along the surface of the ground. And the reason why that happened was because there was no wind. There was no adversity to force them to put in deep roots and to become strong and to become tough. And I think we are still an awful lot like that, where we need that adversity. So if we can find a way to lean in and welcome it and know that we will come out better versions of ourselves, I think that is really powerful. And one more quick thing to share with you. Where are we here? My guest in February is, oh, slide in. There we go. So my guest in February is Fadi, and my webinar is called Strategic Opportunities: Scaling Businesses and Portfolios with Smart Investments. So once we've talked about becoming resilient and leaving the challenges behind us, then we're going to talk about what comes next. What does strategic opportunities look like? What do we want to accomplish, and what does a win look like for each of us? And Fadi is going to be here. He's a realtor in Ottawa, and he's going to be talking about how we build businesses, how we build our portfolio strategically in order to create that cash flow and that life freedom that we want. Thank you so much to each of you for attending. It is so great to see you all. Oh, and that is Tuesday, February 18th, because the 17th is a holiday. So I'll expect to see everyone on Tuesday, the 18th. Thank you so much, Jody, and everyone else for attending. And if you are stuck or having challenges, then please reach out to Jody, reach out to myself. And we don't want to see anyone struggling alone. If we can help, then we will absolutely do our best to do so. Have a fantastic day, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you all again soon. Follow us on Instagram. Bye.